Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we're doing another installment of the weekly meta breakdown where we look at the top performing decks on the MTG Arena ladder. This particular video is for standard best of 1. If you're looking for best of 3, Explorer, Historic, we have some Alchemy based on the championship decks. They're all in the playlist meta breakdown, so you can check those out. We try to get these out weekly to kind of show you the trends of the evolving meta. And we get all our data from Untapped.gg, what you see on the screen, companion tool that runs alongside your Arena client, tracks your win rates, loss rates, deck collection, whole bunch of in-game overlay features. The link is in the video description below. If you want to sign up, a bunch of it is free as well. In addition, there was a comment last week about having, instead of just a dump of the deck lists in the video description, to have links for easier mobile consumption. So I'll start posting links to the deck lists through AetherHub in the video description as well, so you can import those easier on the mobile for the mobile users. Always welcome to more feedback, so please feel free. One other quick housekeeping item before we jump in. I'm like 50-ish subs away from 6,000 on YouTube, so if you haven't already subbed to the channel, if you do enjoy this content, it's free, helps out the channel. Same if you like, drop a comment. It helps the YouTube algorithm. So enough pandering, let's jump into it. The week of September 18th through the 25th. My dog is barking to protect the house. I apologize, but we are looking platinum to mythic rank. 270,000 games of Magic the Gathering were played in best of 1. And we had a week. We had 1 week, folks, with Monoblock not being the top deck. 1 week. We enjoyed it. We celebrated. But Monoblock is back. Who would have thought it? 67.6% with this particular version. We got all the bangers. We got all the cards that just make you hit your head against the wall. Evolve Sleeper 4. This card's really good. You got Tenacious Underdog. You got Graveyard Trespasser. You got Liliana the Veil. Sheoldred, Sorin, Invoke Despair top end. As I was mentioning in the past, they moved off Field of the Ruin and they're playing Roadside Reliquary. This card's just much better. There's no creature lands to hit in this format. Drawing cards is really good, especially when you have stuff like Meat Hook, as well as Bankbuster to provide you up to like 2 card draws. This version's going 1 cut down, 4 Infernal Grasp, kind of hedging more into the fact that Sheoldred is a card that you need to address and address quickly in this format, otherwise it kind of takes over games. So something interesting I was looking at to see the breakdown. So Monoblock control, this is for the entirety of standard rotation, September 1st to now. This is every version that folks have tried out, 93 different iterations of the deck. So this win rate's a little lower, but it's still looking at 230,000 matches played. And then also keep in mind, this doesn't factor out mirror matches. So the 22,500 matches were mirror. You're always going to have a 50% in a mirror. The decks that come closest to beating it are Celestia Enchantments, which we'll cover in the next deck. It's 48% win rate for Celestia Enchantment, 52 for Monoblock. So it's kind of a coin flip. Similarly, like Esper and Rakdos midrange, which are basically very kind of similar decks. The Rakdos is pretty much just Fable, the Mirror Breaker, and Bloodtithe Harvester added in, sometimes Obnixis. But Esper's got Rafine and that stuff. But if we look down, like Azorius controls kind of close, but probably doesn't have much of a win rate against anything else. And this is like the Azorius mid-range decks, which you're probably okay against the counters, but still like mid-50s, kind of dating back. But this is kind of the cool stuff with like Untapped. You could see win rates and stuff, yeah. It's got like pretty terrible win rates versus everything else. So you kind of beat Monoblock, but then you don't beat Monoblock. Moving in next, we have Celestia Enchantments. This was the deck that was #1 last week. Last week it was like 72%. This week it's a little bit lower. I was playing some Celestia Enchantments as well. I can link my version as well. We'll take a look. But for each of these decks that have been played, I'll link a video gameplay if I have it as well for instructions. But this version here is looking to just kind of take advantage of a lot of self-mill elements. You have Teaching of the Kirin, you have Restoration that can throw stuff in the graveyard. Kami comes back from your graveyard. Catilda's Rising Side is very good, throwing it on creatures. You can get things big with like the Kami counters. Kami of Transience gets bigger. When you cast enchantments, Generous Visitor, this one's a Leyline Binding version. So you'll notice 8 Triumphs here to get the cost reduction. Wedding Announcement gives you buffs. Janjo's a nice creature that has Vigilance to get around the Wandering Emperor. The version I played, we got up to 393 Mythic with it. So it's a little bit different. I'm on still some of the same elements, but no leyline or leyline binding. Yeah, that's what the card's name is. Instead, I'm on a Serra Paragon Hallowed Haunting top end. Really like this for redundancy, even just more kind of playing into that self-mill element. Gets a lot of value. Hallowed Haunting lets you go wide and over the top. We got the Wedding Announcements, a couple restorations, but like Catilda throwing it on top of something just helps you race so many of these decks. Even with like Shieldred, you could just outpace them in terms of life gain and stuff like that. Teachings is really good because it gives you a creature and an enchantment to be sacked to Invoke Despair, but it also provides insulation. So if you go turn 2 Teachings, you get it the 1/1. You could then on turn 3 play like a Catilda and it won't get caught by a Liliana minus. So just kind of like lines with that. You got a lot of incidental tokens, so it's harder for them to kind of hit you. You could kind of outscale as well with the meat hooks. So I'll link both these versions. I like this deck a lot. It was really fun. Then we got White Weenie. 63%, 330 games. So we got the Hot Shot mechanic as just a vanilla 2/1 in this deck. We ain't got no vehicles to crew, but Hopeful Initiate mixed in there. You got Guardian of New Benalia as a way to have pseudo indestructible, even though most of the removals, fortunately, exile, sack, or meat hooked. Intrepid Adversary as a Lord effect with the kicker. Thalia to tax, Sun Gold Sentinel to eat like Tenacious Underdogs and opponent's graveyard stuff. We saw even like Celestia Enchantments or stuff like that playing with more graveyard synergy. We have Adeline, Anointed Peacekeeper as the new elite spellbinder, kind of tax your opponents. Brutal Cathar as pseudo removal, and then Serra Paragon on the top end to rebuy your stuff. This version's pretty weak, I would say, to Shieldred. You could kind of tax them, and Brutal Cathar can hit spots to hit Shieldred, but is probably the softest answer. You'd really want like Skyclave Apparition to just... You don't care about a 4/4, you care about Shieldred being a 4/5 Death Touch. That also happens to just gain them life and tax you at the same time. When I was playing Mono White, one of the big things too is just no creature lands, no utility lands really, kind of put you a little bit odd because you have to pay 24 lands for this volume of creatures or this like curve, and you're not getting like a Faceless Haven, a Den of a Hive of the Eye Tyrant, whatever it's called, the Cave of the Frost Dragon. That's the one. Another mono black. I'm going to feature this one because it's different enough. It's a mono black aggro deck. We're looking at stuff like Okiba Reckoner Raid, a couple sagas to drain and gain, and then you get a 2/2 Menace. You have Tainted Adversary, which can be kicked and give you a bunch of zombies. You still have the Underdog package, you still have Trespasser, but this version's on Shakedown Heavy, just a big beater that either threatens them or draws you cards, and then you got some Sorens and Invoke Despairs on the top end. Card we haven't really seen any play is Hostile. The fact this is sorcery is probably what's limiting. You could sack a creature, you put a soul counter on it, then if there are 3 or more soul counters, remove those counters, transform it, and then untap it. Activate only as a sorcery. So the thing is, you can't even like attack and then with the decay trigger on the stack, try to sack it. I don't even know if that's possible, but a little awkward. I don't really like playing 2 of the channel lines. There's just a possibility your mana base gets screwed by having drawn 2 of them. It's happened enough to me that I'm kind of hesitant. But this is another kind of deck to put pressure on your opponent. Going for Hero's Downfall in this one as just kind of catch-all removal. Then we have Gruul Aggro, 62%, almost 63. This is a Hasty Chonkers deck. We got Pack Leader, which gets bigger. We have Kumano, that a whole bunch of useful stuff. Put counters, exile stuff when it dies, pings. You have Phoenix Chick for an evasive creature that could come back. Loam Speaker as ramp and can animate lands in a pinch. Aquarian Beast Caller, just card that scales and gets bigger. And then also you can redistribute counters. You have a Maya Iconoclast. Really like this card. It's either a 2-mana spell or a 3-mana spell. Both are good rates. Like a 2-mana 3/2 trample is good stats on its own, especially, you know, Kumano into this, or like you start throwing stuff with Halana and Alana on it, or Thundering Raiju is always nice. We've got some Squeeze as well, just as a recursive threat, the only 3-drop. Ideally, you want to go like 2 into 4 if you can, or just kind of 2 and then maybe like a 1-drop, 2-drop on curve. I like this version because it's pretty low to the ground and you're kind of banking on this. We're also seeing less cut down, so it doesn't feel as bad with your Halana and Alana getting hit by cut down, where at one point they're playing 4 cut downs, and if their 1 mana spell's hitting your 4 mana spell, it's a pretty big tempo loss, especially for like Monoblock that's going to be killing a lot of your stuff anyways. So we have Mono Red Aggro. This is a deck I wish was good and wish was better, 61%, but I find it has a hard time in the Shieldred meta. Just with Mono Black, a lot of incidental life gain. Off the bat, you should be playing at least 1 Sokuza and Channel Land in this deck. There's no reason to not play it. But we got Radha's Firebrand as a new card, kind of gets around blockers, pretty good domain. I was playing this a bit in Historic as a 2-of. I like it in that deck just because there's a lot of ways with Burning Tree Emissary and the 1/1 Goblin that gives something perpetually haste. So turn 2, this comes out with haste is really good. We have Hammerhand, a pseudo unblockable for a turn, some Chicks, a Shivan Devastator, Kumano, play with fire, Lightning Strike, Bloodthirsty to flash back your burn spells. Stormseekers, fine. It does make Tushi better. Some Squeeze and Raiju as well. We then go to Jund Windgrace, 58%. Yeah, still in order. Sometimes the meta, if they do a refresh in between me pulling, they update the percentages. But this is a kind of self-mill reanimator deck. So you have ways of putting cards into your graveyard, like Teachings of Kurin, the Fable, the Mirror Breaker, Liliana the Veil. And then you either want to reanimate lands with Soul the Windgrace, or you use Cruelty of Gix, Chapter 3, to bring out an early Titan of Industry, or Toxrill the Corrosive, kind of controlling the board there. Otherwise, you just have kind of control elements, Cut Downs, Infernal Grasps, Terrace, Meat Hook Massacre, and then you got like your kind of go-to kind of grind value elements. You know, a deck's got Fable the Mirror Breaker, it's got to be good, right? Fable the Mirror Breaker and 56 other cards is a competitive deck nowadays. Rakdos Aggro, Fable the Mirror Breaker deck. So this is the Anvil deck, and we're seeing kind of a vampire sub-theme in this one. So you have Bloodtithe Harvester, Voldaren Epicure, but you also have the Voldaren Bloodcaster, which is a new addition to the deck. Makes a blood token anytime another non-token creature you control dies. So there's some utility there just to get you more ways to create artifacts for the Anvil. Meat Hooks, Underdogs in here. This version is going with Obnixis, which is better in these types of shells because you naturally want to be sacking, gives you more creatures, and is a nice way of pressuring your opponent's life total. Braids just got a whole bunch of ways to sack stuff to get you value and draw cards. Full 4 of Soul Transfer is an interesting inclusion, just ways to rebuy the Shieldred. You're going to have artifacts, you're going to have enchantments, so it's pretty easy to hit both conditions there. Interesting, this version's on the Bloodfell Caves. I think I'd still prefer one of like the Grixis Triomes, only because like the 1 life in this deck, you're going to gain a lot of life just incidentally. I think I would prefer having the ability to cycle late game, because you don't have like Deadly Dispute or card draw mechanics. Similarly, I don't think I'd be wanting to be on the dual channel lines in this particular deck, but my thoughts. Then we have Mono Blue Delver. For the folks also who are saying this deck's good against Mono Black, it's got like a 43% win rate against Mono Black, but it's an annoying deck. This is very much the deck, if they're on the play, you're going to have a bad time. If they're on the draw and you play a 1-drop, they cry. Because really their only answer for a 1-drop is Fading Hope and then trying to block it later game. But you got Delver, which if your opponent plays, will flip on turn 2. If you play, will never flip for a game. It's actually coded into Arena, which is always kind of fun. And then you kind of just got a bunch of cheap instants, bounce, phase type of cards, counter spells at the wazoo, and you're trying to get really cheap Tolarian Terrors or Haughty Djinns, and then kind of mix in there. Should be playing 1 Otawara as well. This just looks like a very budget-friendly version. But Otawara, again, just a bounce land in your line base is free value. And we got 5-color Joda, so we went from one budget range to the other. This is just cash in all your Mythic and Rare Wildcards deck. This card's awful. Play Triomes instead. This mana base is so painful. Let's play 12 Pain Lines. Play Triomes. but you're basically playing a human tribal deck that's using Joda at the top end to get a bunch of value. You cascade every time. Shauna can gain you life, then it can gain you a bit of life. You got Catilda that can also fix your mana, and you're really just trying to get out of Joda. All your things are legendary and humans for the most part, except the Hopeful Initiate, which just kind of works to kind of fill in the deck, give you a 1-drop there as well. And then with Joda, you're able to buff up the squad, get a whole bunch of value, and just kind of cascade. Lagarella is kind of removal. Shauna is, like I said, life gain, card draw in there. Catilda is also a mana sink to pump your team. Urtai is removal and kind of counterspell built in. Adeline does Adeline things. Then lastly, because you were missing a deck and you've been asking me, can you show me a deck with Fable the Mirrorbreaker, Sheoldred, and maybe Invoke Despair or a Meathook Masker? Well, we got version number 17 of it. It is Grixis. And this is kind of a value pile. People love their Grixis decks, whether they're good or bad, and right now they're pretty good. With the access of blue, you get access to Make Disappear as well as Corpse Appraiser. Corpse Appraiser is both graveyard hate and card advantage in a way. It also fills your own graveyard. You can go Fable the Mirrorbreaker to make copies of it, so it's pretty good late game. Then you have your Bloodtithe Harvesters, Voltage Surge because you have some of the treasure synergies, Sheoldred's on the top end, Bankbuster for card advantage. So that's pretty much it for the week. Let me know what you've been playing. I was doing a bit of the bonus play-in event. It was Alchemy, but honestly, those decks were pretty fun to play, especially because you didn't have to pay for the decks, so I didn't have to spend any wildcards on it. Got my qualifier play-in, so I am qualified for the October season without having to finish top 1200, which was really nice. And I also tried to do a live stream on YouTube, so let me know what you think of that. There's a little bit of troubleshooting. Couldn't see the comments because my Streamlabs was being dumb. So people were talking. I apologize to that, but let me know what you think of that. Going to try to go live streaming a bit more with the content, and we'll do the meta breakdowns offline. But I appreciate all the support. And like I said, if you haven't done so already, hit the subscribe button. We're a couple off from 6,000, which would be a cool milestone to hit by the end of the month. In any case, thanks for watching. Hope you have a great one, and stay safe out there.